All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to another North Country Live summer series. We'd like to thank you for your time and spending sharing your interest in spending this beautiful summer day with us tonight here as we learn more about tools for managing stress with Michele Pearsall. I'd like to ask if we could just keep our microphones muted during the presentation, and at the very end we'll have time for questions. So if you have a question that needs an immediate answer, you can type it in, and I'll make sure that Michele gets the message. But other than that, we'll kind of wait for the very end of our presentation so we can have a chance to ask questions at that point. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Michele and thank her for her expertise and for sharing her expertise and being part of our summer series. So Michele, take it away.
Thanks, Selena. Yeah, I'm nervous. A little bit of stress going on here. We all have stress, right? Every single one of us. So head nod. Are you all nodding out there? I hope so. Yes? Okay. Thanks, Selena. So I just want to give you a little bit of background about how and why I got interested in understanding more about stress and how to manage stress, and a little bit about my knowledge base. So about 10 years ago, when I was in my 40s, I went back to college and I got a master's degree in community health. And while I was there, I had also been working towards a yoga certification, which, anyway, long story, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. So during that time, I started researching more about, oh, Kim's here. Sorry, I started researching more about how stress can really affect us, both for immune response, increasing disease risk, and so forth. One of the things that I wrote about, or I did a research project on, was breast cancer and stress, and how it can help by doing stress management, how we can decrease reoccurrence, as well as increase recovery, and also how it can affect how we move forward with the disease and how we manage our therapy, such as chemotherapy and so forth. So I did a one-on-one project with a friend who was undergoing breast cancer, and she journaled. We did a yoga practice twice a week, and she journaled how she felt after each treatment, how she felt through the process, and then I went back and took that information and brought it into the paper. And then in addition to that, I looked at what we call central adiposity and cortisol, and how stress increases our cortisol levels, which is a hormone associated with stress. And when that cortisol is secreted, what we do is we develop more belly fat, which is called the central adiposity, and we hold on to that belly fat in our middle section. So when that happens, we increase our risk of things like diabetes, heart disease, inflammation, all those things. So looking at if cortisol increases and these things happen because of stress, can we reverse the process by doing things like meditation and yoga and finding all that research that's associated with that? So that was my interest. I also had a lot of stress in my own life at that time. And I can tell you, I was not a good student when I was an undergrad student. I had a lot of trouble with attention deficit. I'm pretty sure, never diagnosed. I'm sure a lot of people have it. But when I went back to grad school and I was practicing yoga, I was working, I had 4 kids I was taking care of. I was driving an hour and a half to Cortland from Oneonta. I was working in Oneonta. And somehow, between my yoga and everything else, I was able to start to focus. And I really saw a difference. So that's another thing we'll talk about. And at the same time, to add more to that, my dad was dying of pancreatic cancer. So it was just like this whole stress in my life at that point in my life. And so I really utilized those tools. So without more information, that's kind of where I came from. I have my 200-hour yoga certification or training, and yeah, and a master's in health. So here we go. Let me see if I can get this PowerPoint to move forward. There we go. And I've got one of those symptoms of stress, dry mouth. I also want to say that people that teach stress and stress management, they're the worst. They're like a doctor as a patient. Terrible. I'm terrible. Yeah, okay. So this is a statement put out by the American Psychiatric Association. Because remember, we're in the middle of a pandemic, even though we feel like things are a little bit back to normal. So what it says is we want to anticipate and address stress reactions. So we all react to stress in different ways, right? We all react differently. We all have different stressors, which we'll talk about. But we want to keep in mind that it's normal to feel a stress reaction when it comes to an infectious disease outbreak. So this is normal for you. It's normal for me. But we want to be aware of signs of stress in ourselves and our family members. So be aware of those things. We want to take steps to minimize and address stress. So the things we can do, and these are just basic things, and then we'll talk more about some tools we can use. We want to keep normal routines as normal as possible. Find a ritual, something that makes you, kind of keeps you grounded. Take part in enjoyable activities as much as you can. If you like to hike, do those things. Focus on positive. This is really, really important. Focus on positive aspects of your life. So some people see things as a glass half full, right? And others sometimes see things as a glass half empty. And then some of us are in the middle. But when things are going wrong or we're in a difficult place in time, it's really easy to see the negative, right? So what is it that's positive right now? What is it that kind of gets you through rather than looking at what you don't have? I, for a while, was looking at what I didn't have my job at the college, didn't have my daughter's wedding can't happen this year, had a grandchild, can't see that grandchild. All these things happened. My husband works as an essential worker at a hospital, so I was alone all day. I was like, oh my gosh, all these things are happening. But if I flip that around and I look at the positive, I'm saving 2 hours a day by working from home, which is really awesome. I've got more time for myself. I can do the things I love. There's some positive things. I've reconnected with people. So start looking at the positive. Start changing your mindset. Okay. So there are things we can control. There are things we can't control. We have to be aware of that. And we have to understand that trying to control those things is not going to resolve anything. We're still going to have that stress. So in doing all those things, we want to make sure we have support from our friends, from our family, and we want to engage in stress reduction techniques and physical activity. So that's, this was a statement by the American Psychiatric Association that I thought was really pertinent to this presentation tonight. There we go. So again, we're living in times of uncertainty, all of us. We don't know what's around the corner. We don't know what's going to happen next week, next month. So in terms of change and stress are often used synonymously, so they mean the same thing. How do you like change? Anybody? I can't see you, but most people don't. I'm okay with it, but as I get older, I'm not so much. So change is difficult, and change creates stress. Change is stress. So we live in this place where many of these things are coming together as far as change, and people are feeling overwhelmed, and we're overwhelmed. That's basically being stressed. So this, on top of all these external things that are happening, pandemic, political things, social change, all of that, we also have personal stressors. Those are the things that are happening within us that you feel. So a little bit different, but they all together just create this overwhelming situation. But if you think of this, where there is change, there is opportunity. So where there is change, there is opportunity. What opportunities do you have now that you didn't have before, maybe? And I think Selena, when she did her presentation, she talks a lot about this and how we can look at things and find other opportunities and other ways to connect with people and maybe, you know, self-improvement, and look at this as an opportunity rather than a hardship, right? And that goes to resilience. So resilience and stress are kind of intermingled. So I really like this statement, and it'll bring us to more forward with what we're going to talk about next. So why are some resilient? I've always been told I'm really resilient. Why am I resilient? I don't know. It's a really good question. I have no idea. But I can guess, and from what I've researched, it's really about what has happened in your past, where your psychological place is in your present, and how we look at things. Again, how we interpret things and how we make the best out of each situation, trying to find something positive in all of that. So even as our personal issues collide with our social and planetary problems, this creates a perfect storm of stress. But we have choices. We have choices in our attitudes. We have choices in our behaviors. So we need to look at how we connect those dots between our mind, our body, and our spirit. Easier said than done, right? So to create positive choices that empower us to navigate through our turbulent times. Okay, so we'll explore further in that as we move on. A few definitions of stress. And really quickly, stress is any change. I talked about that. It's wear and tear on your body. So we have physical stress. Actually running, even though it's a positive thing, it also creates a physical stress. We get cortisol that releases from that as well. Stress is our inability to cope with problems. When we're under stress, it's really difficult to cope with those problems. It's the loss of emotional control. It can be, not always. And it's the absence of inner peace. And that really, I think that is really very, very true. We don't feel at peace when we're under stress. It's a tough one. So this is one of the more current definitions. Stress is a perceived threat, real or imagined, to our mind, our body, our spirit, or emotions resulting in a series of physiological responses and adaptations. So to me, one event might be stressful. To you, it may or may not be. We all see things differently. We could be at the same exact space in time, and we could see the same exact event happen, or we could experience that event. But I might perceive it as very stressful, whereas you may not. It's just the way it is. And it's based on what's happened in our past. You know, we're wired a certain way. So as we learn some of those stress management techniques, we're going to learn how to undo some of that, to train the body to not react to those stressors. So understand how to bring back the body back to homeostasis and get it calm and relaxed. And maybe the next time you see that you have that stressor, or something you see creates that stress, that feeling of stress, maybe you can just flip that around, and you can either add those stress management techniques, or you can just look at it and be like, I'm okay with that. It's okay. Okay? So the stress response, what's the stress response? Stress response is how, my dog's trying to get in, sorry. The stress response is when we talk about fight or flight. We've all heard about that. So if we go back to the caveman era or whatever, we had the stress response so we could get away from, it was survival. So we would run, or we would fight, or we might freeze, right? So fight or flight, and sometimes freeze. Freeze is really typical with somebody who's gone through a traumatic event. So maybe someone who has been, it's beyond stress, someone has been sexually assaulted, or, severe trauma or whatever. People will often freeze, and they might be interviewed afterward, and they may, people are like, well, why did you allow that to happen? Well, it's a real response. The body shuts down, the person freezes. So all of those things are part of the stress response, whether we fight that animal, we run, or we just stop and we're immobilized. We can't do anything about it. a little story. I was quite a few years ago, I was going to have, I found out I had to have a disc fusion in my neck. And the physician was telling me, well, we're going to go in through the front, we're going to put replace that disc, and we're going to take a bone from your hip, and they're going to do all these things. And I just looked at them and I said, I need to go. I need to go. I need to run, or I'm going to pass out. And it was that fear, that just awful anxiety and stress that was created in that moment. And of course, they wouldn't let me go out and run. They made me put my head between my knees so I didn't pass out. So the body's amazing. It just can shut down for whatever reason, to protect it or to save itself. We'll talk more about that in just a second, or I'll talk more about it. So with the stress response, we see something. We see that danger, right? It's a stimuli that's sent to the brain. The brain then looks at that and it says, ooh, threat. The nervous system is activated for that survival. And then the body is activated until that threat is over. And then we go back to that homeostasis. We become calm once again when that threat is gone. So that's typically what happens. And when that happens, we also, along with the body, the mind, and what we see and how we interpret that through the nervous system, we have physiological changes that actually happen. And those get us prepared for that fight or flight. So our blood pressure goes up. We have those stress hormones that are secreted. And one of those is cortisol. So that cortisol is what I talked about in the beginning with that research study that I did. And that cortisol, again, is responsible for that central adiposity, that belly fat that we tend to accumulate there when we're under a lot of stress. So that's a long-term thing that happens. But again, that can be reversed through doing stress management techniques. We also have our heart rate goes up, right? Heart starts beating a lot faster. We have increased vasodilation to the periphery, to the arms, to the legs, getting us ready to run, to get away. We have increased serum glucose for energy metabolism. So our blood glucose levels go up. Again, preparing that body for fight or flight. We have increased fatty acids for energy metabolism. Same thing. Increased blood clotting ability. And we also have increased neural activity to the muscles, so the muscles contract. So if you're under stress and you're not going to run and get away from it, you might find the stress in your neck, you might find it in your hips. Wherever you tend to hold that stress, we feel it there. We have decreased gastric activity, so we might get a bellyache, we might have other issues with our digestive system. All of those things happen. We have increased perspiration because the body needs to cool itself. So this is all good, right? If we're running away from that bear or whatever. But the problem is, most of us, our body has not adapted enough to know that this one-time threat is just, coming and going. We don't have a chance to go back to that homeostasis because we are in a place of chronic stress. We have all these stressors that are bombarding us from, from the internet to our cell phones to every little thing that's happening in our lives. So it really becomes overwhelming. We don't have that chance to go back to coming back to, ground zero where we can relax. I'm going to try to slow down a little bit talking. Whew. Okay. So when that happens, that is the sympathetic nervous system that is invoking that fight or flight. And when we want the opposite to happen, we want to invoke the relaxation response, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, right? So again, I talked a little bit about we can all look at things differently. We all see things differently. We all interpret it differently based on our past experiences, based on our genetics, all of those things. But one thing that is really interesting, because if you look at this is the brain, this picture. And if you look at where the amygdala, which is where we get our strong emotions and where our fear and panic center is, some people have a very hot amygdala. So that means they, just like that, can feel that stress. It just takes a little reminder and they go right back to that place where they're stressed. And that amygdala, actually, when they look at MRIs, they can see that light up. So they've done some research that I find really interesting with this, and it's really specific to meditation. And with that, what they did was they took, they call them Olympic meditators. So these people meditate for hours on end. And Richard Davidson is actually someone who is at the University of Madison, Wisconsin, where my daughter actually is, has done a lot of research on this. So looking at, in an MRI, after somebody has meditated for 5 hours or whatever, they look and they see that that amygdala is no longer as lit up. And they start to see some neuroplasticity of the brain, which is really interesting too, because we used to think that when babies were born, their brain grew and their brain changed up to like their teenage years. We're finding now that by doing some of these things, we can actually change the brain's neuroplasticity and decrease what is happening in the brain with that amygdala, as well as help with our memory recall and our ability to focus. So really good information as far as attention deficit disorder goes, as far as reducing stress and just impacting the brain. So I just think that is a really interesting aspect to that. All right, so this is a little bit of Dr. Davidson. So he also looked at gamma waves in the brain, which are the indicators of the brain's plasticity. And it's what refers to the brain's ability to form new connections between nerve cells. So that's really, really important for keeping our brain young, right? And for also dealing with stress. So it says that on the average, person's oscillations typically last less than a second, but in experienced meditators, they last a lot longer. I don't know exactly how long, but just an interesting fact. And and the important part about this too is that it's not just when they're meditating, it's not just directly after, but it persists for periods of time. So even after, while they're, it's a great thing. And there's a dosage for that. If you choose to meditate, it's about 30 minutes a day, can really make those changes happen. So you don't have to be an Olympic meditator per se. So we also know that there's an association between chronic stress and a lot of health-related issues, and that's undisputed. Increased risk of anything that is caused by inflammation, because stress will increase inflammation. So we look at heart disease, we look at certain cancers, diabetes, trying to think what else, high blood pressure, of course. All of those things create health risks. And if you add on top of that the cortisol and the belly fat, which also increases your risk of these diseases, we're just compounding our health problems, right? As well as the immune system. So we're talking about, we're in this pandemic. We know we have to keep our immune system strong, right? We need to do that. We need to find things to do that. So one way is by reducing our stress. Another way is by getting exercise, that will help with your immune system. Getting sunlight, being out in nature, all can boost your immune system. But if we look at this, we need to understand that when our immune system is affected, we have something called cytokines. Is that how you say it, Selena? Do you know? Cytokines? Well, they're white cells. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it properly, but so basically the cytokines, I think that's it, are cells that communication molecules, and they're secreted in response to stimuli, and they are involved in the amplification of inflammatory reactions. So what is shown with some research is that things like yoga and meditation actually can change that, so it can benefit those cytokines. And if you look at this little diagram below, you'll see that the stressors, everything's related. So we have our nervous system that's being impacted, we have neurotransmitters, we have the cytokines, and our adrenal glands that are secreting these hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, so forth. It all affects each thing, and it increases our risk for anxiety and depression as well as insomnia. So there was actually it's something called psychoneuroimmunology, which is really the study of the brain, psychology, the nervous system, and the immune system, and how they are all related, that we can't separate those, and how stress management can help with them as well. So really interesting things. I'm going to try to move along a little bit though. All right, I did talk to you about acute stress, which is short in duration, chronic stress, which is what we typically have that might go on for on, and how it's not as near intense, but we're being, we have those hormones being secreted all the time. There's no time to come back to that ground, you know, to that homeostasis, right? Okay, so we all need stress, but we don't need too much stress, because if we go from a maximum, a moderate level of stress all the way to the continuum of distress, you can see this is specific to sports performance, but with eustress, that's good stress. And as it climbs up, we get to about that center somewhere, we are at our peak. We perform the best at that peak. When we start going down the other end, when we have so much stress, it becomes distressed, we become over-aroused, and we have a low performance. So you think about this. Have you ever heard the statement, stress makes you dumb? Not a nice statement, but think about a student who didn't study for their final, and they're studying all night long and they don't get enough sleep. And they go in extra stress because they're exhausted and they can't remember anything. Or think about when you were under stress and you can't remember something because you had so much stress. So it impacts our brain, but we need it to be, we need it to a point. Otherwise, we're not going to perform well. Okay. All right, and there are different types of stressors. We're going to really look at, we're going to talk more about psycho-interpersonal influences, because that is really what causes anxiety and worry, and that is really where we focus our stress. So that is something that involves our ego. It's specific to you, within you, and it's based, again, on how you see people, how you think people perceive you, and how you perceive yourself. And it can mess with you a lot. So what I want you to do, just take a moment. I'll give you a couple, like 30 seconds, and write down one personal stressor, something, and if you can, make it an interpersonal, psycho-interpersonal stressor. So what is it that creates stress for you within you? Just anything. Just write it down. Take a second. 30 seconds. Okay, so hopefully that gave you enough time. And I just looked at my watch. I know we started late, but yikes, I gotta hurry up. All right, so again, psycho-interpersonal influences are the greatest percentage of stressors. They're perceptions of stimuli that we create through our mental processes, our perceptions, our interpretations, and they involve our thoughts, our values, our beliefs, our attitudes, opinions, and perceptions that we use to defend our identity or our ego. A lot of words there, right? Kind of explained it though. All right. And just understand there are different stages we go through, and you know, through as we come into that stressor and how our body reacts, and these are the stages, and we finish with exhaustion. And if you've been in stressful situations, you're like, it's that letdown, it's that exhaustion, right? Okay, so the relaxation response. This is where I wanted to get. This is the important stuff. Thought this was kind of cute. So sleep is really important for helping manage stress. So if you have trouble falling asleep, just lick your feet for a few minutes. It works for the cat, right? Maybe, I don't know. So sleep hygiene, really important. One thing to do to manage stress. And we're looking at other things, a holistic approach. So looking at the whole mind, the body, the spirit, all of those things for emotional well-being, mental well-being, physical and spiritual well-being. So, you know, all those things impact our levels of stress and vice versa. So looking at good nutrition, good rest, good exercise can all help us improve the immune system and also cope with stress, right? And I thought this is a nice saying to kind of move forward onto our techniques. I'm an old man now, and I have known a great many problems in my life, most of which never, ever happened. Again, it's about perception. Mark Twain. All right. So here are some simple tools. One of the things that I did, I taught a 4-credit class at SUNY Adirondack for a few years. It was a stress management class. And one of the things that I had the students do, it was, so really I'm cramming in a whole semester for all of you in half an hour. One thing that they found very helpful and I found very helpful is journaling. So if you've never done journaling, it's a really good thing to start with. And it can also be adapted into some of these other techniques. So what I mean by that is, as we go through some of these techniques, and you were to practice them, and if you were journaling and you documented what your stressors were, you could then document next to that what you did to help manage that stress. And when you start identifying patterns of what's creating the stress, and you start identifying what works for you, then you're going to be more successful. And just writing things down sometimes just really, really helps. My daughter had some severe anxiety issues for a while, and this was one thing that really, really helped her. And I've had this, you know, students, I've read their journals, and you'd be surprised by the things they say and the things that they're going through. And so it can be helpful. And, you know, I welcome you to try that. Time management, we all know if we don't manage our time, it creates more stress. Something I teach students. You know, that's something I'm not going to spend time with you on, but it's a good thing. Positive affirmations. Positive affirmations are, it's part of cognitive restructuring or reframing. So it's talked about perception and about training the mind to think differently. So if you think about this, if you have a negative thought and you focus on that negative thought, or if you get up in the morning and you have one bad thing happen, right? And you're like, oh, my day is going to be awful. It's going to be awful. And the next thing you know, you're spilling your coffee on your white suit and something else happens. We get that negative thought pattern. So we want to flip that around. We want to start having some positive thought patterns using cognitive restructuring, reframing. So a positive affirmation is basically taking a negative statement and taking it and making it positive. So it could be something about you physically that bothers you. You can use it that way, or it could be something that is creating stress, and you could flip that and just write it down. Change the wording, make it something positive. Simple enough, right? It takes practice, but it can help. It can help not maybe in the moment of dealing with stress, but it can help over long term with how we manage, how we look at things, and how we work towards improving that. Same thing with a gratitude list before you go to bed in your journal. You know, what is it I'm grateful for today? Really important, because we tend to look at the negatives and we don't look at what's positive in our lives. Creating a mantra. A mantra is just something we say, we use it a lot in yoga. It's a statement or a brief statement. So, you can focus on that statement. I am loved, or, something like that. It can be anything. And when you come into that stressful situation, using that mantra can bring you back to a place where you're a little bit more relaxed. Okay, so the breathing techniques is we're going to practice some breathing techniques. So I welcome you to bring a mat, but you can do this sitting up. It doesn't matter. Just breathe. So think about this. When you're under stress, what happens to our breathing? Sometimes we have like a big frightful scare. We hold our breath. We don't breathe, right? Do you ever find yourself holding your breath? You're not actually taking full breaths. We typically don't take full breaths anyway. But our breath rate goes up. Our respirations go up. On the average, we have 18 to 20 breaths per minute. When we're under stress, it can double. So we want to learn how to slow that breathing down. We want to learn how to take a deep diaphragmatic breath. when we breathe, when we're children, we automatically breathe diaphragmatically. We use our full diaphragm. So the belly comes out a little bit. If you ever watch the baby sleeping. As we become adults, we don't do that anymore. We're trained to pull our belly in. And so what's happening is we're not getting a full, deep diaphragmatic breath. We're not using the full diaphragm. So what I want you to do now is I want you to just go ahead and close your eyes. Just close your eyes, close your eyes. Yeah. Let me know if I'm not loud enough, Selena. So as you close your eyes, I want you to just take one hand, and I want you to place one hand on your heart, right at the heart center, just your palm. I want you to take your other hand, place it on your belly, your umbilicus. And I want you to bring the breath in through your nose. You're going to inhale nice and deep through your nose. And as you inhale through the nose, I don't want your chest to rise for that hand. I want you to let the belly expand, or let that belly rise against your hand. So fill the belly. And then you're going to breathe back out through the nose. Draw the belly in. And then just pause there. So repeat this again. Deep breath. Inhale through the nose. Allow the belly to rise. Exhale through the nose. Soften the belly. So go ahead and do this at your own rate. Now, it's difficult sometimes for people to breathe in through their nose. So if it is, it's okay if you exhale through the mouth. See if you can breathe in through the nose and exhale through the mouth. If in and out is hard for you through the nose. So nice and quiet. Again, inhale through the nose. Allow the belly to rise. Pause. Exhale through the nose. Pull the belly in. And pause. Now what I'd like for you to do is see if you can lengthen that breath just a little bit. So on your inhale this time, I want you to inhale as the belly rises for the count of 6, slight pause, and then exhale, count to 6, and repeat that. So go ahead and begin your inhale now. Count into yourself. So we're going to stay right here, but we're going to add something called the 3-part breath. So it's a little bit different, but it also helps calm. So you're going to bring that breath in through your nose. Going to inhale. The hand on the belly is going to rise. And then I want you to allow the rib cage to rise. And then exhale through the nose, release it from the rib cage, release it from the belly. Try that a couple more times. So belly, let the ribs expand. Exhale through the nose, release the breath from the ribs, from the belly. Repeat that a couple times. So now we have the 2 of the 3-part breath. So this time we're going to inhale through the nose. We're going to feel the belly rise, and then the rib cage expand. And then that hand on the chest, if the hand is still there, I want you to feel the chest rise. And then you're going to release that breath from the chest, from the ribs, and from the belly. Repeat it. And you can keep your eyes closed. I should have done that in the very beginning because it really helped me. I don't know if it helps you all. But simple things like working with the breath, practicing that is really a beneficial tool because you can do it anywhere at all. You know, especially if you're a person that's really prone to anxiety, really, really helpful. And you can add that 3-part breath. It takes practice. So again, remember to practice that. It can help at night when you're trying to go to sleep. It can really help calm the mind and the body that way too. So the next one is, and I'm going to just have you open up your eyes now. And this one, I don't advise if you have a cold or if you have really bad allergies or a sinus issue. And it's, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but it's called alternate nostril breathing. So you're just going to take your hand, your right hand, and you're going to take your pointer finger and your middle finger, and you're going to bring them to your palm. So that leaves your ring finger, your pinky, and your thumb out. So you're going to take that hand, and these 2 fingers that are back, they're actually to put your nose in there. So, and hopefully you all have clean hands, right? Because we're touching our face. We've got to be careful with that. So we're going to start by closing off our right nostril with our thumb, right thumb. So we're going to close it off. First, take a breath. Take a breath first. Inhale. Close the nostril. And then we're going to exhale out through our left nostril. Then we're going to inhale through the left nostril. Close it off with your finger. Open up, release your thumb. Exhale out that nostril. Inhale through the nostril. Close it off with the thumb. Release your other nostril. Exhale. Inhale through the left nostril. Close it off. Exhale through the right. Make sure you move that finger and then inhale back in. So you repeat that about 10 times. It can really help with the left and right brain, calming the body and the mind. So it's a really good tool as well. The next one that I like to talk about is visualization and guided imagery. And we can use this one with the breath as well. I'm going to do a really simple exercise with you. So what I want you to do again is I want you to close your eyes. Remember your deep diaphragmatic breath, eyes closed. And I want you to begin to visualize. And what you're going to visualize, you're going to visualize this cloud. And in this cloud is going to come out through your mouth or through your nose, whatever is most comfortable for you. So you're going to inhale first, nice, fresh, clean air. And then you're going to exhale back out that cloud. And that cloud is excreting all of the toxins and the bad stuff and all of your stress and anxiety. Let it all go. Visualize that cloud, that black cloud coming out through the nose. Now you're going to inhale back in that beautiful white cloud, that beautiful fresh air. And then exhale and repeat it. And I want you to just do that a few more times. And I want you to picture your own cloud, letting go as you exhale anything that is bothering you or that you've held on to, that stress that you might have. Exhale it, picture it, visualize what that is, actual object maybe, and let it go. A few more times. Okay, we're just going to open up our eyes now. And I'm just going to mention briefly a couple other things that I'm not going to go into right now because we talked last week, Angie talked about mindfulness and how that can be really beneficial. In meditation, there are mindfulness meditations. There's also, when you do yoga, it's a kind of meditation and movement, and we're really connecting our breath to that movement, and that's one of the reasons that's what makes it different from other exercise, right? Exercise can be helpful, but again, we have some cortisol that is released. So if we can bring the mindfulness into our exercise, that's really great. And again, another thing is nature and water, really beneficial in stress management. So I just want to, these are my references. This will be posted. So if you want to go to any of these places where I got some of the information, a couple really good videos that's specific to meditation and so forth. But I'm really out of time, and I know we want time for questions, so I'm gonna leave it there.
Thank you so much, Michele. This has been just wonderful. I already feel more relaxed. So I want to thank you so much for your time and your wonderful presentation. And I realize that I can't breathe out of either sides of my nose. Like, oh boy. But I also want to thank the North Country Foundation for helping us enhance and maintain a quality education experience for all of our students in our communities. I want to also thank the Opportunities to Share group for helping to put these ideas and bring these presentations to us, the North Country enrollment team, and most especially every one of you. Thank you so much for taking your time and spending your Thursday evening with us here. We all really appreciate it. We'd also like to invite you to the upcoming presentations we have next month. We'll be focusing on different aspects of business. We have some wonderful speakers, and in August we'll be looking at history of the Adirondacks and looking at just many different things that have happened here in the Adirondacks and what makes us so special. So you'll be getting invitations to join those in your emails coming up soon, and we hope you will consider. And please tell your friends, the more the merrier. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Michele for questions.
Hi, do we have any questions? Don't forget you have to unmute your microphone if you have a question. Did I put them all to sleep?
No, I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you. This was really beneficial and a lot of good information. I needed it. I got the cortisol belly.
Thanks, Mary Irene. Appreciate it. Come to one of my yoga classes someday. Well, if there are no questions, then I guess good night.
It was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great evening, and hopefully we will see you at our next presentation. I think it's, I'm just looking, it's on July 9th.
Yay. All right, good night, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thanks, Michele.
Thank you, Michele.
You're welcome.
Wonderful
Thank
job.
you all. Thanks.